just a minute, we'll go to Rick Grenell, a former acting director of national intelligence, ambassador to Germany, and a special counsel for the ACLJ on foreign affairs and national security on this issue and this involving Chinese nationals. There's five specific that have raised the eyebrows of members of Congress and in Washington, D.C., because these five who were known to have lied, I mean, they have photos of their military uniforms now. They uncovered that, but then they dropped all the charges. They not only have they dropped all the charges, but it happened 2 days before the Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, from the Biden administration traveled to China.
Which means usually, and because we've been involved in these things, which usually means there's something much deeper going on here.
Yes, but at the same time, you have congressmen like Ted Lieu saying it's not the Chinese that should be investigated. Chinese nationals, foreign nationals who, again, not Chinese Americans. And there's a huge distinction there if you're an American or not. I mean, if you're working for a foreign government, it should not matter what the color of your skin is or what you look like. It's that you work for a hostile government and you lied about it on top of that, so you shouldn't be in our institutions anymore. He wants them investigated.
Yep. All right. So, Rick, you were the acting director of you were the head of national intelligence, director of national intelligence. Your reaction to this move by the Justice Department under President Biden?
Look, I'm fearful that we're getting to the point where prosecutions are political. And what I mean by that is they pursue certain cases and drop other cases. And that weaponization of DOJ, we saw in the Trump administration when the FBI and DOJ officials ignored facts and tried to pursue a conclusion that was political in nature with the whole Russian collusion narrative. They knew from the beginning that all of the facts were against them, but they wanted a political outcome. And I fear that now, let's be honest here, Joe Biden in the campaign called Hunter Biden's laptop Russian disinformation. He's never disavowed that. And think about that. All of the information we've been able to find out about Hunter Biden in China, what the Chinese know, how they've utilized him, all of that was dismissed by just saying, well, that's Russian disinformation. That's not true. We had 50 former intelligence officials come out and sign a letter and say this is Russian disinformation. That is not true. It's never been corrected, and the media don't pursue it. So I fear that these prosecutions are an extension of what Joe Biden is trying to push with DOJ, with the FBI, with others, of protecting Hunter Biden and his relationships in China.
Rick, one of the things I think that's most troubling here is that there's this push by members of Congress, Ted Lieu and others on the Democrat side, but I think playing into the Biden administration's decision here is that we shouldn't actually be investigating these Chinese researchers who are not Americans. They are Chinese foreign nationals who are here. They lied on their visas. I mean, that should just get you kicked out of the country right away. But if you were obviously engaged in espionage, it's more serious than that. But they're trying to turn it around and say, no, this is attacking Asian researchers in America. Instead of focusing in on the threat that China poses, this is not about Asian American researchers. This is not about Japanese researchers. This is about specifically Chinese representatives of the Chinese government lying about their connections or work with the Chinese government, and then being in our top institutions. The FBI knows it. It looks like they bungled some of this, to say the least, and may have hampered the DOJ's move. But there's also this. It scares me when they start making these political moves to say, well, we can't investigate this at all because that's Asian hate.
I have to be very careful here because I know a little bit too much after serving as acting DNI. But let me just say this to Ted Lieu. He knows better. And it's shameful what he is doing. It's really hard for me to talk about this subject and Ted Lieu and what he knows. But the reality is we know that the Chinese have sent spies over. We know their work. We shut down the Houston consulate. We should have shut down the San Francisco consulate. We didn't. I think we need a bigger response. We're going to get less of a response from the Biden team because of their connections to China. And what Ted Lieu is doing is so shameful because he's taking advantage of being Asian and pretending. Look, let me be clear. He's protecting China. He is doing China's bidding when he says things like this. And he should be very, very careful because he's spreading misinformation and he knows it.
You know, Rick, I have been to Beijing. Jordan has been to Beijing. We participated in a conference on First Amendment, free speech and religious liberty in China. And, of course, everyone knows that's listening to this broadcast that China is one of the worst offenders of human rights of any country in the world. And on religious freedom, you have to have underground churches. Pastors get arrested every day. It's still an issue. So their human rights record is horrendous. And it's almost as if we reward them by coming over to the United States. And I'm talking again about Chinese nationals affiliated with the government that are here to spy on the United States, to gather information. And it's like we're rewarding them for bad behavior.
It's such a crisis. I have to be so careful talking about the issue. It is such a crisis in America with what the Chinese are doing. Look, I always say that Russia is a problem, but China is a crisis. And we've given too many defensive briefings to politicians who ignore some of the work that they're doing. And it's got to stop. And unfortunately, they feel that we've wound ourselves backwards with the Biden team. The Biden team is very nervous about what China knows about Hunter Biden. It's why the whole lingering idea that everything on Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation continues to be something that reporters, the propagandists in Washington, D.C., are afraid to challenge the ruling party on this issue. But Politico, which originally pushed this idea of Hunter Biden's laptop being Russian disinformation, has never disavowed that. Right. We've had people like Leon Panetta who signed the letter. And let's be very clear. They never saw one iota of a piece of raw intel that suggested that. That was a political argument 3 weeks before the election. It was pushed by Joe Biden. It was pushed by 50 former intelligence officials. It was pure politics pushed by Politico, and no one in Washington has ever rolled that back to say we were wrong. So Rick, they were wrong.
Let me ask you this, because I think to get right down to what I think is the major issue here, and that is, you said, this was really well said, Russia is a problem, China is a crisis. I want to put this in context. I mean, I'm not asking you to disclose anything, obviously, that you're not supposed to disclose. You were the acting DNI. I mean, you were the Director of National Intelligence for the United States. In your ranking of problems, is China number one?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard because number one, I'm not sure what the criteria is.
Yeah.
I always say that China is a crisis that's going on right now. And with the Biden administration in charge, with their ability to mimic the Beijing lines, that Russia is the problem. That's exactly what the Chinese want us to say, is look over at Russia, look over there, don't look at us. And this whole idea that China is somehow just a partner to be managed is very scary when you look at the intel.
Yeah, no, it's exactly the thought I have, and it's my chief concern.
Yeah, I mean, Ray, on the academic side, this to me, and I know we have to be careful, but we're seeing it in mass that this is obviously where they've wanted to target, where they focused in on is. Yes, we've seen members of Congress and the issues that Swalwell's had and others, but it's a massive move at the U.S. research institutions to place these individuals. Yeah. And at a certain point, I just think we have to cut through this narrative, which is going to be pushed on. It seems like everything these days that it's somehow impolite or offensive or wrong to target nationals of another country who are working for their government.
Yeah, and so Rick, why go ahead.
I was just going to say, university presidents in the United States have not had enough scrutiny on how much they pay individuals, how much all of the assistant vice presidents and vice presidents and all of the administrative people get paid, while at the same time collecting money from China and Chinese interests.
Yeah.
It is a scandal. And obviously, the Chinese money has leveraged many of these university presidents and university administrations because they need the money because they've made commitments. I mean, look, Joe Biden got $919,000 from the University of Pennsylvania to be some sort of a fellow. That's outrageous when you look at the cost of education.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your insight on this, Rick.